Hey there, welcome to the Movie Review Mom YouTube channel. If you are here for the very first time, yay, you finally made it. I'm so glad. And if you're a returning subscriber, yay, thank you so much for your support as I try to grow this channel. My goal is to save you time and money. I hate watching horrible movies because it's like it sucks hours out of your life and those hours are precious. So my goal is to give you the heads up on filmmaking quality and content so that you can decide whether or not you want to spend time or money or both watching a particular film. So today the movie I'm reviewing is called Bleeding Love. This dramatic indie road trip movie is now playing in select theaters as well as simultaneously on Amazon Prime. The film is rated R, and I'll tell you about the content here in just a minute. It's an hour and 42 minutes, and my overall movie review mom grade is a B+. I actually really enjoyed this movie. So first I'm going to give you an overview in a nutshell, and then I'll point out things I liked, things I didn't like. I'll offer tips for parents, themes worth talking about, funny lines, interesting lines, and recommendations for other films that are sort of similar that you might also really like. All right. Sound good? Let's dive in. So in a nutshell, the story is about a father who takes his estranged daughter on a road trip in an effort to get her out of trouble. And in fact, she almost OD'd. And so in a panic, he and his ex-wife trying to figure out what to do to help save this girl. She's about, they said how old she was, and I can't remember. And I just watched it today. I think they said she was 20 years old, 21, something like that. Anyway, along the way during this road trip, they meet all types of crazy strangers as their strained relationship is put to the test. The film was directed by Emma Westenberg, and I thought she did a very good job. And writing credits go to first-time newbie Ruby Castor, along with Clara McGregor and Vera Builder. Now, Clara McGregor might sound very familiar to you. I'll get to that here in just a second. So while critics have blasted the film with a low rating of only 54% on Rotten Tomatoes, audiences have proved that they enjoyed it by awarding it 80%. And as I said, I really did enjoy this film. You can derive a lot of good out of this film. So let me give you tips for parents. I think kids are going to be bored. Ultimately, it's adults talking. A young woman consumes a lot of cigarettes, drugs, and alcohol. We see a young woman throw up, so that's always icky. There's profanity and quite a few F-bombs, not so many at the beginning of the movie, and then it just builds and builds, and I'm like, okay, I've lost count. There's a lot of them. A hooker propositions the father and helps the daughter with a spider bite that's in her private parts, which is kind of an awkward, weird moment in the movie. There's talk of going to rehab, and we see a young woman just make terrible choices that include stealing and lying and boozing and doing drugs and putting herself in very dangerous positions. If you watch this with your teenagers, point those things out to them and talk about where is the end of that road if you make those types of decisions versus other types of decisions. What are the consequences, both short-term and long-term? You might have some really good conversations that way. And then additional themes that are definitely worth talking about with your kids or with whomever you watch the movie are family, connection, addiction and recovery, pain, regret, memories, anger, forgiveness and redemption, and estranged relationships. So there were a lot of things I really liked about this movie. First of all, I adore Ewan McGregor in everything he does, even though I haven't even seen everything. There's one movie where I hear he's totally nude, and I'm not interested in that. But I was really curious to meet his eldest daughter, Clara. I hadn't seen her in anything before, even though she has been in several films already. In real life, there was a time when she called her father, the wonderful Ewan McGregor, an a-hole for leaving her mother, which he did do in real life. Clara and her father were estranged for a time in real life. So what they bring to these roles can be said to be truly authentic because they lived a similar experience with their own relationship. The father in the story left his wife and began a new family with the new woman, just like Ewan McGregor did. The names of the father and the daughter are just that, father daughter. That's how they're listed in the cast list. So I'm assuming that that's to make them more relatable to the audience, as their story has been told many times. Father-daughter relationships can be very tricky, and they often do become estranged for a variety of reasons. And that's the story that's being told here. There's a cute scene where we get to hear Ewan McGregor sing the Leona Lewis song Bleeding Love on the radio. I just love his voice. His enthusiasm while he's singing to the car radio gets his daughter singing along, and they have a sweet moment until a phone call interrupts them. The movie gets its title from this moment, Bleeding Love, which also describes the troubled father-daughter relationship that's featured in the film. Now, if you really want to hear Ewan McGregor belt it out, watch the movie Moulin Rouge. Click down below to see my link, and that'll take you to see that on Amazon. Now, there are many flashbacks that fill us in with the missing details and allow us to see the once close relationship between father and his very young daughter. And they're very heartwarming memories. Sometimes we see the father flashing back and remembering them, and sometimes we see the daughter remembering those moments. And it's a really interesting way of storytelling that I really enjoy. It's heartbreaking to watch this daughter constantly searching for harmful substances and self-destruction. I hate seeing that in movies. As the mother in me, I want to go out and rescue them and help them. And yet we see in this movie, sometimes when people are really in the thick of it, they don't want to be rescued. They don't see it as being rescued either. There's a really great soundtrack in this film. I liked the direction that include many close-ups. So close up, we could see freckles and teardrops and little twitches in the actors' faces, as well as expanded shots that kind of give us perspective of time, as well as clarity and how and where they are on this journey, emotionally as well as physically. The color palette offers kind of a slight hazy stupor type, to kind of show us where the daughter is going through, where she is emotionally. And I thought that that was really interesting and a good choice. I never knew that people put coins on railroad tracks. The father and daughter do that just for fun as they hear a train coming. And what they see is smashed silver pieces on the railroad track. And now that might be dangerous for trains. And so I wouldn't recommend that you do that. But I thought it was interesting to learn that apparently that's a thing. And they both got a kick out of it. And you could tell that was something that they did as their relationship, was from years prior, that they just did that. And they got a kick out of that. There were traditions that they had that they continued. And oftentimes as parents, we'll see our children protest, but they often don't protest too hard, because I think they recognize that that's a thread that ties parent and child together. And it creates that thread of who they are and where they came from. So if you call your child, some little nickname or whatever, and they're like, oh, mom, dad, don't say that. And if you see a little uplift in their mouth that secretly tells you that they really do like it, maybe use it sparingly, but you can still use it. Now, if they're like, seriously, don't ever call me that again, well, then, you need to respect their wishes. It just kind of depends on the child and the relationship. Now, I grew up with a bunch of kids in my family, and so I only really have one memory of when I had my dad all to myself. He took me on a date to a very formal restaurant, just the two of us. I got dressed up in my nicest, fanciest long gown that for some reason I had. I was probably 10 years old or something. And I loved it. And it was especially important and a big deal to me because I'm an identical twin and I have siblings. And so I was rarely seen as an individual. I never really knew if my parents saw me. I was always one of the twins. You know what I mean? And so if you are a parent, make time to go on dates with your children and do it more than once, because sadly, I only have that one memory. And I know you're busy. Parents are insanely busy and exhausted, but it's absolutely worth your time. So I tried to do that with my four sons as I was raising them, and I would always let them pick whatever activity they wanted to do, And that's what we would do. And I have sweet memories of those. And I hope that they have sweet memories of those as well. They rarely watch my reviews. One of my son does. Calvin, if you're watching, I love you. Anyway, all right. So on to the list, the very short list of things that I didn't like in this film. First of all, the film is very slow moving. Road trips often are. Road trips are a discovery, a character study, and an opportunity for the characters to experience different things together. And so we see that, and it's a slow meandering path, both physically and emotionally for these two. We see and hear Clara peeing behind the truck several times, and it made me laugh because it actually is true. I don't know, girls have to pee way more than guys do. My sons can go like a whole day. I'm like, you're clearly not drinking enough water if you can go all day. But I remember they didn't, when they were growing up, they didn't like doing it at school. So they would wait until they would come home. And I'm like, how could you wait? If you have to go, you have to go. But anyway, I digress. At one point in the story, it's actually important because something happens when she's peeing. Otherwise, I'm just like, why was that included? The one time I can see, but why did we have to see that so many times? I just wondered. Anyway, and that really is my only complaint. So whenever I watch movies, I take notes, I write down, of course, I take down or write down funny lines and interesting lines. And you can see all of them on my written review at moviereviewmom.com. But I will share some of them with you right now. So the father and daughter run into this older lady when their car breaks down, and they have to call for a truck to come and pick them up and drag their broken car to a place to get fixed. Anyway, this lady had just such a funny personality. For example, she says, when she first gets out of her truck, she says, "Somebody order a stripper." And then the father and daughter kind of look at her, like, what? And then she's like, just messing, and I just thought that was so cute. I wish I were more playful in real life like that. And then another thing that she says to them is, I was the biggest thing to happen except that UFO. And then again, the father and daughter kind of look at each other and she just laughs. And then another interesting line is when the daughter says to the father at one point, she looks at him and she says, "All grown up now, I remember you used to be way more fun." And that's a line that he says to her as well. Life is serious when you get older, and the relationship absolutely changes. Oh, and then another line I wrote down about the same lady, who's played by Kim Zimmer, by the way. She does such a good job. Is they get out of the car, and I think it's her cousin is going to fix their car or whatever. And she says to them, "Now, don't make direct contact with anyone." And she says it with a straight face. And again, they're like, "What?" And then she's like, "No, I'm just kidding again." Anyway, and so they meet these very colorful characters along their way, which I really like. And each of their experiences are very, very different and fun and make for a very colorful road trip. And then an interesting line I thought was when the daughter just is going nuts, and the father is like, "What are you doing to yourself? You almost died. Stop with the drinking and the drugs." And we learn that he actually had an addiction and that he's not perfect either, but he had to go through, do the work, and go to AA and, go through all that recovery. He knows what it's like. He knows it's hard, but she kind of just flippantly says to him, "Everybody does drugs. Everybody drinks." And I was like, whoa, that is 100% not true. And yet I think people that do drugs and alcohol to the extreme, they just think that that's what everybody does. And they need to know that's not what everybody does. You can live without those things easily, which is what I do. Anyway, and that just hurt my heart to think that I know that there are people out there that think that that's life, that that's just a part of life. And it absolutely doesn't have to be. It just makes life so much more difficult. All right. Now, before we go, let me give you some recommendations for 3 films I instantly thought of as I was watching this one that I think that you might like. The first one is called Beautiful Boy. Now, this isn't a father-daughter, but a father-son troubled relationship where the son is involved with addictions and self-destruction, and how the father's trying to deal with it. There's some estranged moments, very well done, beautiful acting moments. Another one is called On the Rocks, and that is a father-daughter relationship. Lately, I've been doing a ton of reviews on father-daughter relationships. Actually, there have been so many that have been coming out. So I was trying to come up with some that I haven't talked about recently. But the third one is called Somewhere, also a father-daughter relationship. And again, you could just scroll through my playlist and see so many of those father-daughter movies. And for me, of course, they're powerful because I had a father-daughter relationship, and there's so many nuances of that. And so this is one more beautiful film, I think, if you don't mind seeing some of this destructive behavior and you like Ewan McGregor, I think that you're going to enjoy it. It may not be everyone's cup of tea, but I really did enjoy it. All right. Hopefully my review is helpful. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, subscribe. You know the drill. Have a fantastic day, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye for now.